Hi, poets. Today we are talking about our final week of the course and the major assignment that's coming in this week, as well as your final exam. We're going to take a look at the guidelines and review some former students' chapbooks so that you can think about your design this week as you're finishing your project. This text is coming from our LMS, and so hopefully you are already familiar with the language here. But I want to make sure to go through the different elements of your chapbook and reflection essay assignment so you can make sure that everything's in order before you submit. So for your collection, what you need to have are 16 to 24 unique original poems that you have written. It might be entirely written off of the prompts that classmates have given you, or you may have also written some poems on your own this term, just in response to things that you're living through, or as you read through your set of poems, you realized, hey, a poem about this, or this would really help my readers understand the story I'm telling them in my book, or the emotional experience I want them to have in my book. So make sure you have at least 16 poems. Again, we're not talking about pages. Some people's chapbooks may be 16 page. Well, no, it wouldn't be. Some people might be 19 with the cover and title page and such, and other people, they might be closer to 30 depending on how long their poems are. A cover, and that is going to include your book's title and your name. How you would like to design it is up to you. You have a lot of different options. It could be very simple and just text. It could incorporate graphics. It could be text on color. And we're going to take a look at some examples to give you some ideas as you make your final choices this week. A title page is optional. An author's bio page is optional in the chapbook as long as you have it in issue, or vice versa. You can have it in your chapbook and not have it in issue. But we want to let our readers know who wrote this. A table of contents and having page numbers in your book is mandatory. And some other optional elements, we're going to be taking a look at those student examples that will show you what some of these things are, would be a dedication page, an acknowledgement section, including section breaks, if you'd like to incorporate graphics or illustrations, or if you want to include a book synopsis, a foreword or an intro or an afterwards. And you might be incorporating your self-reflection into your chapbook as well if you would like a wider number of readers to be able to have that context. For the bio or about element, you essentially just want to let readers know who you are and what your chapbook is. So you can determine how much personal information you would like to share, since this is something that you will be posting on a site, and whomever you share the link with would be able to see it. So how those links are shared are kind of depend on who you choose to share it with. If you send it to your aunt and she is just a huge, oh, this is amazing, check out what my niece or nephew did, right? And they share it on their Facebook page, right? It'll blow up. Probably you'll become super famous and I'll be able to tell people I knew you back when. So that's something to consider. If you would like to have some anonymity, you're welcome to talk to me about having a pen name for your project. You can also just choose to use your first name and not your last name when you set up your issue account, and when you create your cover. And then in terms of when you're sharing about yourself, it could be something as simple as, you know, this person created this chapbook about relationships for a poetry writing class. Right? If you'd like to do that, it could be that simple, especially if you want people to go into it as through the context that you're a student and you're learning about poetry. Other people might want to say, this chapbook is about our relationships with each other, created by a poet who lives in the Midwest, right? Or you could, provide more information about yourself. We've written various author bios, but I just wanted to make sure that you thought about what you are revealing when you put your information into your free issue account and set it up. You can put this bio or about element again within your book, and we'll see, sometimes people will use the very end of their chapbook, that last page, to include that or include, other things. Or it could be something that you just paste into issues description and you don't include it in your book, or do both. Some folks like to include an author photo with their book, and you can absolutely do that. Or again, you can choose not to do that. So you need something, at least one sentence, but you can go above and beyond. This is your book. You're the boss. And I hope that you are excited to share and encourage readers to engage with your work. Definitely contact me if you want to talk about it. You'll be submitting your work to Issue. You'll create a free account and it will turn it into an ebook for you. We're going to see what that looks like in just a moment. When you do that, you'll need to have taken your Word file and turned it into a PDF file. And then it's pretty quick, simple upload process, and it will generate a URL for you. And then your URL is what you will be submitting to the class and perhaps choosing to share with readers beyond the class. With this project is also a self-reflection essay. One of our goals for the course is revision, reflection, thinking about our process and our growth. So this is an 800-word essay that reflects on your poetry, your work, your development as a poet this term. Again, this could be something that you choose to include in your book. So if you want everybody who's about to read your poems to have this information, you might want to put it in as, the introduction to your collection in the book. If you want readers to engage with your poems and you think that they might have some questions or would find it interesting to learn more about your book and you could include it in the end of your book. If you're like, oh, I don't want anyone to ever see this, but you, Professor Whiteacre, then you could turn that in as a separate Microsoft Word document with your URL to your chapbook, and I am the only person who will see it for the purposes of completing the evaluation for your poetry class. So it's totally up to you. I've shared some different questions for you to think about that you can use as prompts, like how did you approach the creation and the revision of your book? Why did you arrange it the way you did? Maybe how did you come up with the title? What themes do you focus on, and why do you explore these things in your work? Maybe elements of literature that you've been spending a lot of time practicing and refining. Maybe you've developed a particular form for your poem, or are really proud that you've spent a lot of time thinking about sound or figurative language. You can talk about that. And then also, how do you see your poetry and your writing developing? Have you discovered anything about creating this book that maybe surprises you or encourages you? Where might you be headed with poetry in the future? What could your journey be? What are you starting off on as you end this book project and the course? Now, these are not prescriptive. So let's say you get started answering that first question and you hit 800 words, then that can be the focus of your essay. If you're like, what else do I say? Well, then you might be able to go through, each one of these, or if there's one you want to skip, right? Or if you want to add in anything, you absolutely can. So these are suggestions to help you think about what should you be reflecting about in your essay. And if you have questions, please let me know. Before we start exploring eChapbook design, I want to take a moment and remind you that in our LMS, we have a bunch of resources to help you with this project. I've made different book building tutorials that help you do everything from designing a cover in Canva to designing a cover in Word. How do you insert that? How do you set up margins? How do you make your page numbers look fancy so they appear on the outside of your books rather than having one in the margin? How do you use insert page breaks? All of these different things. And so I hope you'll check them out if you find yourself wanting to do something in Word that you've never done before. Also, for example, section breaks so that you can have page numbers in some places, but not in others. So Remember that those are there for you. They're very short. I screen share how to do it in the program, and you can also hit YouTube for different tutorials as well. And I'm in office hours, so you are welcome to visit, and I'm happy to screen share and help you work in your file live time. So let's dive into some examples from former students. This example is a book called What is Heaven to a Shadow by Ashley Ray Cox. And you can see in the big graphic here, this is what her book looks like in issue. So you can see the launch page and the cover there. When you're in issue, when you click the button, it'll flip open. And so that next graphic shows you what her title page looks like. Something you're going to want to think about as you are building your Word document that you may not have thought about before is the inclusion of blank pages so that the text appears on the side of the book you want it to be on when readers are flipping through. So when you think about, a book that you're reading, right? And you flip it, usually the inside of the cover doesn't have text on there. So if you want the title page to start on that right side of the book, you would need to insert a blank page into your Word document. Here, the title page, it has the title and the author's name repeated. This is optional. You don't have to include a title page, but if you want to be fancy and real deal, just like a published chapbook, that might be something that you want to do. When you flip Ashley's book to the next page, you see down at the bottom very small text. This is where she chose to put some attributions. She let us know where the art came from, right? So she kind of shared that permission that she was able to use it and let you know the original source. And there are quotations throughout the book. And she let you know who the source of those quotations are. On the right side of the page there, she has a dedication to, who has she written this book for? Now, if you are borrowing other people's materials, you need to provide those attributions somewhere in your book. This is just one example of how you could do that. But a dedication would be an optional element of your book. As you flip then, you see Ashley's table of contents. She chose to center hers and she's put her poems in different groups and she has different sections. So for example, the very first section is hymn. She starts her book with her reflection essay that she chose to call From the Author, and she writes it as a letter to her readers. If you kind of go across there, you see the end of her reflection, and then you see her section break. So her first section is called Hymn, and you see a quote from that source that she let us know at the very beginning of the book. You flip the page, you have a blank page, and her very first poem shows on the right-hand side, just like it would in the Floodgate copy I was holding. And you'll see there that that's where her page numbers start. So she's starting her page numbers there, and she was able to achieve that through section breaks in Word. And then, the poems and the different section breaks for those two other groupings follow. Here's an example called Ticking Time Bomb, which was created by Brittany Altman. Here you can see her launch page on issue. You're going to start by just seeing your cover there. And then when you flip, she has a white blank page, the inside of the cover, and then she presents her table of content. She chose to group her poems into different categories or different sections. You can see the section titles there, and then you see indented the different poem titles there. I also wanted you to see what it looks like to choose a colored background. So here we have bright blue that runs throughout her book, and you can kind of think about that experience for your readers as you're setting things up. Here, she also includes illustrations that are kind of dotted throughout her book, a roller coaster that kind of goes with that poem on the right side of the page. And she chose to incorporate some quotes from different people. Now, she's choosing to put the person the quote is coming from with the quote on the page. If you look at her poem there, and then at the next graphic, you can see that they're off kilter a little bit. She did that by creating text box for the poem and then working with maneuvering the text box to create that askew feeling. the formatting in her poems is very varied. And so she kind of uses that technique all the way through. Here is one more example of using a color background. This is Intertwined Chaos of Life and Love by Tyrese Love. He starts with his with his cover on his issue page. And then when you flip it, you see his table of contents. And then you see his first poem. And then later on in the manuscript, he chose to end his manuscript with his reflection essay. So he's talking about his work at the end of the the collection. So you kind of read through everything, and then you hear from him about what he would like to share about his work. And you can see there his description is this chapbook was created to provide different perspectives on life and love. So again, when you're thinking about describing your book to your readers, you can summarize what your theme is or what your goal is. This is a book called Last Flowers that was created by James Gartner. And I wanted to show you this one because I think it has a very interesting table of contents that's working visually in some different ways than what we might normally see. So we have the cover, and then that table of contents is to the right. So when you flip it open, it has that kind of I always think of it as geese flying in the air, but the poem titles are there, and the title for the page table of contents is in the center, and then we have the page numbers moving there. He included a blank page that has this textured background, and then when you flip it, you see the first two poems in the book. Some of the poems, like the one on the right, he chose to illustrate by having a graphic behind it, and you're very welcome to do that. And then you'd also want to think about the contrast. So notice that the font color changes in order to provide enough contrast with the background. And so if you're working with that, make sure you're aware of that so readers can easily read your work. Because really that's most important. We want to be able to read your poems. Here is a book called Orator Redefined. This is by Kendra. She has her cover there. And then when it flips open, she starts her book on the inside of the cover with a dedication, and then she presents her table of contents. And I thought, again, this was another interesting way to think about the table of contents and, how you can visually present that to your readers. She started her book with her introduction or her reflection essay, and then she moved to her first section. So this section is, broken up into three main categories. And for her section break, she chose to use a graphic that really pulls people in. So the first section is orator, body, and then all of her poems that are kind of thinking about that theme follow. And then she moves to the next one that has a different graphic. This book, The Pendulum Blob by Bryce Longenberger, as you can see, kind of starts with a photograph of a child. This book he did not share in his description, but this book comes from the perspective of a mother who is talking to her son throughout the book and trying to explain to him and deal with his origin story, which stemmed from a great trauma. And so the picture there he selected because he wanted to kind of give people an idea of who is this young boy that the speaker is talking to all the way through. As you flip this book, he starts with acknowledgments. This is another way to do it. Not only did he want to provide an acknowledgement for the photograph because he didn't take it, but he also wanted to share some notes about the poem. So if you are writing poems that say take song lyrics from other people or working quotes from other people or other poems, you could choose to provide that information in a note in your acknowledgements page. And you can also thank people as well. If you'd like to say, I'd like to thank my poetry workshop group for helping me polish these poems for my book, right? That would be a place that you could provide acknowledgement to those people who helped you. So acknowledgements can work in a couple different ways. When you flip, then you see Bryce's table of contents. Again, this one is a little bit more traditional, but notice he chose to put his page numbers very close to the words rather than all the way on the right margin, like we've seen in some other examples. When you flip, you see his reflection essay, and then you flip the page and you see a dedication. And then when you flip, you see his first poem. A lot of his poems are along the right margin. I thought that might be interesting for some of you to see. Some of them go back to the left margin, back and forth as you go. So you can be thinking about your poem placement as well as you go through your final design. And then this is our last example. This is called Feel Everything by Shannon Walter. I think it's interesting to note in this picture, it gets me every time, that is someone's arm. It always at first looks like sand dunes to me, but that's somebody's arm feeling everything. When you flip that cover, Shannon started with her acknowledgments. She thanked people, and then she also let us know where did that photograph come on the cover. Her table of contents shows that this book is set up in quite a few different sections. So when she was trying to think about the experience for her readers, she realized that because she was writing off prompts in the course, she ended up talking about a lot of different things. And so she decided to use themes to help organize that for readers. Whereas Bryce, as he was working through his course, he ended up writing a narrative. Like all of his poems started to become through this character. He was bringing in a fiction background. And so he kind of like wrote this character. So you can think about how you want to organize your work as well, and whether or not you'd like to use section breaks. Shannon incorporated a lot of quotations from other people in her book. And so as you flip, this shows here a quote from someone, and it also lets you know how the different sections are going to work. Then she starts presenting a poem that kind of gives you an idea of the collection. And then in that next one, right down, you see the title or the section break for loss with a quote, and then you go into her poems. And I did want to share the very last page of her book, her back cover shares a quote as well. You're not seeing a reflection essay here in Shannon's book because she chose to submit that to me and me alone. So that came in as a Word document, something that was not a part of the book that she shared with her loved ones. So before we talk about the final exam, I do want to share that links to all of these books are found in our student work gallery on the resources page. So if you would like to go in and explore and check all of these out and see the entire book, you can. And there are a tremendous number of excellent examples in there doing all sorts of different types of things. I just tried to kind of pick things that were doing things a little bit differently. So a ton of ideas that you can think about. And if you're thinking, I might like to try a collage for my cover, or I might like to try color backgrounds or illustrating, go in and see how other people have done it. So you can take the best of those ideas and apply it to what you think will work well with your book. So that's happening this week, the final week of the course, and make sure that you keep an eye on the deadlines for your chapbook and reflection essay to be submitted. Then finals week, we only have one assignment left that I hope you will find really fun. So for our culminating experience, I'm asking you to explore a way to disseminate your poetry and promote yourself as a poet. So you can decide how you would like to do that. Students in the past have taped themselves reading, or have created a video like you've done with the project this term. But rather than showcasing somebody else's work, they showcase their own work. You can make a broadside, which is a poster that maybe you would ideally print and put up in your home or share with people. You could create a social media graphic post, tweet a poem. There's so many different options. So you decide what you want to do. How are you going to share out something that you've created, and then execute your plan, share it, and submit it with us. So a lot of different social medias could be used for this if you have accounts with them, but you don't need to create anything specifically for this project. So you should be working with what you already know. There are a lot of other ways too that you could do that as well. For example, if you're doing print media, you might hang it up in your dorm room and take a picture of me to show me that, hey, for final exam weeks, everybody walking through this particular hall gets to see my poem, right? You could also share, maybe through email or other ways, Snapchat, like Facebook. There are a ton of different ways you could share your work. So you decide what works best for you. And if you have any concerns about your idea, brainstorming, need help, contact me so we can talk about it during week 15 so that you know how you want to execute your plan. You already have all the skills you need for this, and it's just a matter of deciding how do you want to share out with people. Something to consider, a lot of times students will create something where then they will share their chapbook link and issue as well. So you could also think of this as a way to say, hey, why don't you check out my work if you feel comfortable sharing with a wider audience than the class. So by the posted exam deadline during finals week, share the promotional material you create in the forum. And then when you post it in the text box, let us know what target audience you were reaching, why your choice was a good one for that audience, and why it helps market you as a poet. So you're sharing with us what you have. It could be a screenshot, it could be the file, it could be a URL, and then that short paragraph letting us know what your goal was for the final exam. As we complete our course, do not be shy about getting in touch to talk about your book as you put on the finishing touches and brainstorm and thinking about how to execute your final exam. I am available through messages, and of course, we can see each other during Zoom office hours or make an appointment if you can't meet me during the posted times. I am so excited to see your book, to read your reflection and see how you feel you've grown as a poet this term. And I can't wait to see your final exam and see you sharing out in kind of a soft opening, letting people know what an amazing poet you have become. Yeah, keep in touch, and I can't wait to see what you create.